Does Travis Hunter deserve to win the Heisman Trophy? Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me, and the key word here that we're going to discuss today is deserve, right? Not do I think Travis Hunter will win the Heisman, not do I think he should win the Heisman. Does he deserve, when all's said and done, if he is handed that trophy, will it be earned? That's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about the Heisman criteria, what it takes to win this award. We're going to talk about historic winners by position. We're going to look at his odds history from the beginning of the year when he was a 60-1 odds to win it. Now he has an 80% chance to win it. We're going to compare him to past winners. We're going to look at some other options this year that could end up taking it in these final weeks, and then we'll wrap it up with a few last thoughts. So here's the issue. And this is the hardest part for me, is the criteria is so subjective. It doesn't say how many games a team has to win or lose. It doesn't say how many stats a player has to record. It doesn't say they have to have a Heisman moment. But all of these things are factored in some way or another, or have been kind of baked into the decision over the last 100 years, right? Now, technically, it says it goes to the most outstanding college football player. Emphasis on a performance that demonstrates great ability combined with diligence, perseverance, and hard work. A lot of subjectivity goes into this, right? What I determine as diligence, perseverance, and hard work may look different than another voter. So this leaves room for a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and that's why we're here today. So if we look at winners by position, 93% of Heisman winners have been running backs or quarterbacks. Major contributor to points and results for a team, as you would expect. There have been 3 wide receivers historically, 2 tight ends, but you have to go back pretty far to find a tight end that wins, and 1 defensive player, 1997, Charles Woodson. There's an asterisk here because some people believe that there was some conspiracies surrounding this. He beats out Peyton Manning's senior year to win the Heisman in 1997. People believe that Peyton Manning was actually left off of voting ballots in certain states, and so he was not even an option in first, second, and third. The margin was pretty close in terms of Woodson beating out Manning. They also believe that Woodson and Michigan had more nationally televised games, which played into more people being familiar with his game and thus voting for him, whereas nowadays we have games for every team on every channel all the time, so that doesn't play a role anymore. So if you take out this asterisk, right, no defensive player has ever won, and only 3 wide receivers have ever won, so why Travis Hunter, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. Here are his odds. He is now a minus 350 odds to win. That is a 78% chance to win the Heisman. Ashton Jeanty for Boise State, running back, plus 375. And then Cam Ward is the third most likely at 14-1. And again, you see his odds have trickled down. This is Travis Hunter all throughout the year. This was last week, plus 220. It is now minus 350. So if we look at previous wide receivers who have won this award, I said there were 3. Tim Brown won this in 1987. His stats we're not going to include just because the game has changed and they are much worse than these other winners. And I don't think the game of football is the same back in 1987 as it is now, almost 40, 50 years later. So we're going to ignore that, and I hope you understand why. Okay, so here's the deal. Desmond Howard wins this in 1991. 61 receptions, 960 receiving yards, 19 touchdowns. He had 12 rushes for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he had 2 returning touchdowns, 1 kick, 1 punt. Great. Devonta Smith for Alabama a few years ago, 98 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Great. Now, how does that compare to Travis Hunter, wide receiver for Colorado? Well, here's the deal. He has 2 games left. So I'm going to project his stats. What did I do? I looked at the 10 games he's played. I've averaged it per game, and I've added 2 extra games on the end. So using those very loose average-based projections, he should end the season around 90 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 11 TDs. So looking at this, yeah, he has more receptions than Desmond Howard. Sure. He has about similar but more yards than Desmond Howard. Yeah, sure. But he has about half the touchdowns as Desmond Howard, 11 to 19 receiving, and that is not including his 4 other touchdowns. All right, that's a pretty big margin. Yards, is one thing, but to have 200 more yards but 10 less touchdowns, that's a significant drop-off. As for Devonta Smith, guys, 1,500 receiving yards compared to 1,100, that is almost, he has 33% more, okay? Travis Hunter has only eclipsed 2/3 of what of what Devonta Smith eclipsed, right? That's a significant drop off. So if we're looking at Travis Hunter as the wide receiver, period, only the wide receiver, does he deserve this award? Absolutely not. I don't think anyone will debate me on this. Travis Hunter does not deserve this award as a wide receiver. Looking at his rankings with 2 weeks left, he's 14th out of wide receivers in yards, he's 6th in receptions, and he's 9th in touchdown. I give that a B. That's good. That's solid. But it's not Heisman worthy. If the Heisman has to go to a wide receiver this year, and all we're looking at is wide receiver stats, it's not going to Travis Hunter. It's just not. Okay, so if we're basing this only on wide receiver stats, Travis Hunter does not deserve the Heisman as a wide receiver at purely the wide receiver position. Now, looking at the defensive player, which I already said there was some controversy, Charles Woodson, he's the only defensive player to win, but he was a two-way player similar to what we see in Travis Hunter. He had 47 tackles, 1 sack, 8 interceptions, and 9 passes defended, 12 catches, 238 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also had 36 punt returns for 301 yards and a touchdown. Now, how does that compare to Travis Hunter? Well, let's do some projections here. If we project out the rest of the year, Travis Hunter, I made a quick small error here. He has 23 now. He should have 27 by his all said and done. He's averaging 2 tackles a game. 3.5 interception, 10 passes defended, no sacks. Significantly worse than Charles Woodson. Not even should be in the same conversation. Half the amount of tackles in the same amount of games, and almost a third of the interceptions. Okay, half the interceptions. Now he crushes him at the wide receiver position. Absolutely dominates him. It's not even close. Okay, so we don't have to debate there. Travis Hunter had a much better wide receiving year than did Charles Woodson, and then he is not playing special teams, so that's kind of irrelevant there. Looking at Travis Hunter's 2024 rankings with 2 weeks left, there are 86 players with 3 or more interceptions. There are 39 players with 8 or more passes defended. And there are 1,500 players with 23 or more tackles. Now, I'm giving this a D. Why am I putting it in quotation marks? Because how much of a story do stats tell? Obviously, people can get in the comments of this video and they can say, well, people aren't throwing at him, right? They're not throwing at Travis Hunter because they respect his ability. That's why his stats are lower. Okay, maybe. But this is where we kind of get into this gray area of what makes someone deserving of the Heisman. And if it's not stats, are we just using the eye test? And is the eye test good enough to give someone the highest award in college football seasonal to seasonal history, right? So another thing that comes into play is Colorado's 8-2. They have 2 games left, one against Kansas this weekend, which is going to be a tough game. All right. If we look at how a Heisman players team performed, there have been 28 instances where the winner is on an undefeated team, 29 instances on a 1-loss team, 16 instances on a 2-loss team, and only 12 instances on a 3-loss team. So do his losses matter? Honestly, I don't think so. Okay, if they lose to Kansas, I think his odds are he's less likely. I think we start seeing some of these other guys get closer, but I don't think it rules him out because we've seen in the past historically they give players. My daughter's singing, and I'm so deep in this. We're just going to keep rolling. I'm sorry, okay? I don't think the losses of Colorado affect his chances to win this, all right? You would like it to go to an undefeated or a 1-loss team. That's what it looks like it typically does. But if Colorado loses to Kansas this weekend, I don't think it hurts his case too terribly much. Now, here is a stat that is maybe a little bit nitpicky. Smith, the wide receiver, went undefeated. Desmond Howard had 1 loss. Tim Brown in 1987 had 3 losses. Charles Woodson's team went undefeated. So Travis Hunter would be the first non-QB or running back to win the Heisman with 2 or more losses in the last 37 years. And, if we want to even rule out Tim Brown because the game was so different back then, you could say that no Heisman winner that's not a quarterback or running back has ever had 2 or more losses. They've all come from undefeated or 1-loss teams. So that would be something that stands out a little bit. Let's look at the pros and cons of each of these players. Right now, Travis Hunter is the favorite. I think the pro is he's a 2-way player. And I think we're going to have to start accepting that. And this is not being a hater. This is not me being critical of his game. He's very talented. He's going to go top 3 in the draft. He's going to have an NFL career at the wide receiver position. And I have nothing bad to say about the guy. It's impressive that he plays on both sides of the ball, but his defensive stats, his team records, and even his wide receiver stats are kind of cons to the argument. They're not exceptional. They're good, and his wide receiver stats, I would say, are great, but they're not Heisman-level stats. If we look at Ashton Jeanty, his stats are the pro. Breaking records, could potentially break some all-time records if he keeps pace. But his weakness is strength of schedule. It would be the first time a Heisman winner has come outside or inside of a group of 5 team or a non-power conference team since 1990. So it's been a long time since that happened, and there's kind of this standard that it goes to good players on good teams. All right, Cam Ward, his stats obviously speak volumes, but Georgia Tech, I think, is the con. If Cam Ward doesn't lose to Georgia Tech, I think this trophy is his. Curtis Rourke for IU, I think the pros here has expectations. His stats aren't great, but nobody expected IU to be undefeated going into this game against Ohio State. And so, I think he's in the conversation because of that, but his strength of schedule has been rather weak. Now, hear me out. I got some options for you that I don't think will win, but I think have an interesting case. Dillon Gabriel. I think if the Big Ten trickles out like it looks like it's going to, and Oregon plays Ohio State again, and Dillon Gabriel gets it done against Ohio State again on a neutral field, I think there's an argument to be made that Dillon Gabriel is deserving of the Heisman, although his stats are meh, okay? Jackson Dart, he has losses to Kentucky and LSU. That hurts his case, absolutely. But if you want to look at pure stats, he's arguably the best statistical quarterback this season. He has big wins. He has great numbers, highest quarterback rating. I think it's an option. Will Howard, kind of the antithesis of Dillon Gabriel here. He needs to beat Oregon. The situation I said for Dillon Gabriel needs to play out, but Will Howard needs to win. Will Howard's had a solid campaign, but the way that Ohio State wins games, he hasn't necessarily had to put up crazy stats. Now, his stats are great. His stats are solid. His stats are better than Gabriel, worse than Dart's, but Howard's win-loss is more impressive than Dart's, right? You see how all of this kind of gets mixed about. So here are some final thoughts. And this is where we can kind of go back and forth. We can split hairs, all right? Cam Ward's 1 loss to Georgia Tech is worse than Colorado's 2, right? Because Cam Ward is getting blamed for the loss as the quarterback does, whereas Travis Hunter will never be blamed for a loss because he's just a wide receiver. He's just a defender, okay? Ashton Jeanty stats are dismissed due to his group of 5 schedule. If Ashton Jeanty played for a Power 5, like a good school, we'll just say that, and he had these stats, he would be the favorite to win, and it would be over right now. But because he plays for Boise State, even though Boise State is looking like they're going to get into the college football playoff, has done enough to earn that honor, he is still not the favorite because of, his did I spell his name wrong there? If I did, I apologize. There might be an H in there. Because of his schedule. Okay, Dillon Gabriel's undefeated season doesn't matter because of his stats, right? So here we have guys with good stats and losses that aren't going to win. And then we have guys with mediocre stats but wins, and they're not going to win. And then we have Jackson Dart, again, good stats, but he has 2 losses. So Travis Hunter's mediocre stats and 2 losses are dismissed because he plays both sides of the ball. That's the conclusion I'm coming to, right? Because you either have guys who have great stats and a soft schedule or losses, or you have guys with mediocre stats but who check the boxes of no losses. And they can't pick one of those guys. So instead they give it to the guy with mediocre stats and 2 losses on the principle that he plays both sides of the ball. So if we're going to answer the question we sought out to answer, does Travis Hunter deserve the Heisman? And here is my take. And this can be disagreed with, and I'm not going to be offended, and I'm not going to be upset, and you're not going to hurt my feelings, okay? If Travis, I'll just say this before I read this off. If Travis Hunter wins the Heisman, will I be disappointed? No. Do I think there were other more deserving players out there this season? Yes. Okay? But does Travis Hunter deserve win the Heisman? If the justification is based around him playing both offense and defense, then sure. If Heisman voters can say, I'm voting for Travis Hunter because he plays wide receiver at a pretty high level and he plays defense at an okay level, but he does both in the same game, and that's why I'm voting for him, then sure, I'll take that. But if the argument is that he plays both offense and defense at the highest level, Heisman high levels, I think that's incorrect. I think that's a flawed view of what Travis Hunter is doing. And we haven't even talked about Colorado's schedule. It isn't good. I mean, Colorado's strength of schedule is bad, right? They haven't really played much in terms of competition. So If we are going to sit here and say, well, Travis Hunter wins the Heisman because he plays both offense and defense, even though he does so at a mid-high to mediocre level, especially on defense, then I'm okay with it, right? But if you want to sit here and say he's winning because he is a fantastic defensive and offensive player, I'm going to ask for some nuance, all right? Now, this quote may be a little harsh. Jack of all trades, but a master of none. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to need to get a little bigger. I think he's going to, you can make that argument because Tyreek Hill's not very big, yada, yada. He's going to need to put on something, okay, a little bit of mass. I don't think he stands a chance in the NFL at playing defense. He needs to drop that after the next two games, college football playoff, whatever it is. He needs to drop that. He's done with defense. Congratulations, you played both sides of the ball. That is a very impressive feat. But you're a wide receiver now. Period. Okay, like that's not up for debate. Okay, so I'm interested in seeing how this plays out. I do think there is a path for some other guys to wiggle their way in. If Colorado loses to Kansas this weekend, I think some things get very interesting in the eyes of voters, in the eyes of Vegas, in the eyes of the odds. So thank you guys. Let me know in the comments what you think we will see come Heisman voting time. If you think it's his or if you think there is someone more deserving, I love to hear your guys' arguments. I welcome them. So bring them to me in the comments, and we will see you next time on the Green Means Go channel.